Welcome back to True Poker Dealer live stream. My name is Marc Shumsker, and I will be your host for the day. And today it's story time. We're going back to 2011 when True Poker Dealer first started, and you all may know me as True Poker Dealer, but let me tell you something. I was anything but alone in this, and you're going to get to meet the man I leaned on for so many different things. And if you have any questions, as always, suggestions or anything like that, please put them in the chat and I'll get to them at the end of the video, or we might stop periodically and see what you guys have to say. Before we get started, I do want to remind you to please subscribe to the channel. Subscribing is great for you to find out when I put out new content, and it's also a free way to show support to a creator like me. Like I said, my name is Marc Shumsker, and I am the founder of True Poker Dealer. I've been working in poker in casinos since 2007 as a dealer, supervisor, and shift manager. I also did a stint as table games dealer and a pit boss as well. And here we have Jerry, who, just real quick, Jerry and I created True Poker Dealer to help people learn how to deal poker. So Jerry was there from the very beginning. Without Jerry, this never would have happened. And I'm actually super happy to say that I finally get to have you on camera in a real meaningful way. And I do say a big thank you for showing up and doing this with me.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am.
I know you, and so I'm listening for sarcasm there. And we started this back in 2011, and since 2012, when this was first launched on YouTube, True Poker Dealer has helped thousands of people like you learn to be poker dealers, and that's what this is all about. So here, like I said, I have Jerry here. He's a dear friend of mine. I've learned so much from him, and here he is on camera. So just to start out, Jerry, people sort of know me here, a lot of the people, but you had two separate careers. Do you mind talking about that? Introducing yourself a bit?
No, I don't mind. When I was 21, I went to New York, not knowing what I wanted to do, and quickly became enamored of photography and worked for a couple of really good photographers who learned the skill, became a photographer. I suffered in New York for about 6 or 7 years trying to get new clients, and it was difficult. Finally started to do okay, so ended up having a career as an advertising photographer. And I luckily, when I moved to Miami, which was in 1978, I was just fortunate. I met enough people who could get some clients, got a couple of really good clients, got married, had kids. My intention was to go to Hawaii. I never got there. I'm still in South Florida. And it turned out to be a very, very good career for me. I was in it at a time when photography was still valuable. It is no longer the case. Everybody's a photographer. Everybody's got an iPhone. And the iPhones are as good a quality as the initial digital cameras that I bought that ran in the thousands of dollars. So, it just became a thing where nobody wanted to pay for photography anymore. So I looked to reinvent myself and find something to do, because I reached an age where the people who bought photography were so much younger than I, and they didn't really want to book a guy who was, been around for 30 years. They wanted to book their buddies. And I don't blame them. That's how it worked when I was coming up. I would try to get friendly with somebody in the art department, take them out for a lunch or whatever, and, become their friend, and maybe they'd throw me a little something. So that's just the way the business works. It's not that different from a lot of businesses. Certainly in show business, it works that way, But anyway, so I did that, and ended up with a bunch of national clients, and put my kid through law school, and that kind of thing. So it worked out just fine.
So Jerry, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
The audio seemed good in the beginning, but sometimes it's actually a little hard to hear you. And so if there's some way to go grab something, maybe some headphones or something that have a speaker in them. Do you have anything like that?
I will try it. Yes, I do have something.
Yeah, give it a shot. I'm going to sort of talk about, so what Jerry was saying, he's been a photographer for years, and he started up going to New York, in case you couldn't hear it. And he was in New York City, and literally turned it into a very, very good career for himself. I've been to his house a lot at this point, and the pictures that he has that are up there, my background right now that you're seeing, I have a green screen here, but this background is of the table and it's at his house. All of the original True Poker Dealer film was done at Jerry's house, and huge thank you to Jerry for that. And it's like seeing the stuff that he's done where he's got, I can brag about him. It's, he wants to be humble, but he's got Muhammad Ali and Amarillo Slim and Michael Jordan and like all these people who he's done professional photography for over the years. Seeing all of that stuff at his house is pretty remarkable. You getting that to work, you think?
I've got it on. I'm not getting it to work yet. What I have to do is connect it to the Bluetooth, and I'm not sure I remember how to do that.
I got you. Honestly, right now it sounds a little bit better. I don't know if anything changed, but
I don't know if I did anything. I might have touched something. Can you hear me okay now?
I can. We'll see how it goes. There's always the ability. I mean, it's a live stream. We can always just fix it if we need to. But so yeah. So you spent how many years as a professional photographer and all these crazy bookings?
Well, I was in New York for 13 years, and then up until about 2009 or 10.
Gotcha.
So, a long time.
So it's like 30-ish, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And then what led you to be a poker? So you were a poker dealer after this, and that's how we met. We met in a poker room where we worked.
So I'll give you a brief synopsis of how that happened. I consider myself an accomplished liar, and that should make me a good poker player. Unfortunately, it did not make me a good poker player, and I was playing quite a bit and not having a lot of success. And I thought, well, maybe if I learn how to deal the game, it'll help my poker game. So I went to poker dealing school, and it didn't help my poker game, but I learned how to deal. And when an opening came at this casino where Marc and I met, I went and applied for a job and didn't get it. Thank you.
So I did a lot of auditions back then. I've talked about this at times, and I must have done 330, 340 different auditions, and we hired dealers, right? But we did end up hiring Jerry, just not as a dealer at first. And if I'm being honest with you, we probably could have hired you as a dealer. Sorry to admit that now on air. You were just right.
That helped me a lot now. Thank you, Marc.
Well, no, the one thing that's really interesting about my relationship with you is, you did a lot of this stuff behind the scenes that made True Poker Dealer possible. But by now, you've actually been in the box as a dealer for more years than I have.
I got hired in 2009 as a chip runner, and then 6 months later got promoted. So,
you were a dealer for what, 8 years?
8 or 9, yeah. 4 different casinos, plus
the
World Series.
Yeah, the World Series too. You did do one summer at the World Series, which I'm sort of jealous of. I definitely want to get.
Well, I have to thank you for that because you did fire me. So it put me in a position where I have to do something. I felt like I should. And it was the time of the year where WSOP was just opening up, and I applied, and they hired me.
That wasn't exactly me, but I know what you're saying. But yeah, so like I was in the industry for a long time, but I did a lot of supervising, right? So your time in the box is, at the end of the day, is more than mine. And I'm glad that you brought up the World Series of Poker. For anybody that's thinking about, COVID aside, for anybody that's thinking about dealing the World Series, could you just give us like a short recap of what your experience was like there as a dealer?
It was something that I was a little tentative about because a lot of big names out there, and it's a little intimidating. But I did go out and do an audition, and I did get hired. And I rented a little studio apartment. I was there for 2 months, and we worked a minimum of 8 hours, and sometimes 12 and 14 a day. And it was hard. We were working 6 days a week, but it was great. If I tell you, I had so much fun. And the way things work out in Las Vegas is different from anywhere else in the country. First of all, your tips go into your pocket, which is just such a big difference from the way every other casino works.
When you say that, just for anyone that doesn't know what you're saying, are you saying it literally goes in your pocket, the tips, or are you saying that you get to take home the cash and you don't report it and wait for it?
Yes, I'm saying all of that actually. You put the chips in a they request that you wear a little fanny pack, and you put your tips in there at the end of the night. You go and cash out just like a poker player would. That money goes in your pocket.
So you walk with the cash after you do all that.
And they tax you on your hourly rate and a pretty limited amount of your tips. They estimate a certain, 10% or 20% of your hourly rate as tips, which you do much better than that, obviously. But living in Las Vegas for 2 months was a lot of fun. I went to a lot of different poker rooms, had a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds exciting in itself. We do have a couple of True Poker Dealer members saying, hi, Masters of Cards. Hey, how's it going? Greg, hey, how's it going? Greg does ask the question here, what does a chip runner do besides move chips?
Well, actually, it's funny because when Rick, who was our supervisor, called me, and he said, well, we don't want to hire you as a dealer. We want to hire you as a chip runner. I said, great. What does a chip runner do? So he had to explain it to me. And what it is basically is you are helping the dealer to keep his bank full by getting him chips when they need it. And they tell you a certain breakdown, or you do the breakdown X number of ones, X number of fives, X number of 25, and you bring it to the table and you fill the bank. And that's, other than that, I used to do some, because we weren't busy for a long time, I used to do some of the announcing on the microphone, which I really liked. Attention poker dealers and all that sort of stuff, poker for players. And it was fun. We started out very slow, it called it. But when it got good, it was fun. It's more fun to deal than it is to be a chip runner.
Yeah, it's also a lot more money too.
Yeah, it's just a foot in the door. Not most, but a lot of dealers are chip runners first.
Totally. And, for anyone that thinks about getting into the industry, a lot of people, especially through True Poker Dealer, they think, oh, I want to learn how to deal and then get a job as a dealer. But there's plenty of opportunities to have these other jobs in poker rooms, such as chip runner and brush. And a lot of the time you get access to the supervisors or dealers where you can learn to deal, sometimes even on the job. And they also get a sense of who you are as a person. And so it's almost like if you're a chip runner for 6 months, you're getting interviewed for 6 months, and you get 6 months worth of opportunity to impress them in terms of your work ethic and some of the other stuff. While you
get to do other jobs. Sorry to interrupt. You get to do other jobs, like you do. Sometimes you do the announcing. Sometimes you'll go work the front desk if the girl up front or the guy up front is on lunch or whatever, and you learn a variety of tasks, which is nice. We had a thing where we did a promotion with we were giving away jackets and T-shirts and hats, and I learned how to fold clothes. It was great.
So something I just wanted to mention about your dealing career that I find really cool and interesting is, you started out as a dealer in Calder in South Florida, and and then you ended up leaving there. You did the World Series. You also worked at another room in Miami that you were okay with it. Like, you liked being a dealer, but you wanted to get to the Isle at Pompano.
Yeah, that was my goal, was to deal there, because every time I went there to play, they were just enormously busy. Almost every table was filled, and it looked like a good opportunity to, have constant work.
And I watched your process to get there. So if you're a poker dealer and you have a specific room that you want to work in, doing what Jerry did is really a very smart way to approach it. Jerry, I watched you kept applying. You were always very pleasant with them. You would go in there periodically and sort of talk to them. And eventually they gave you an audition. There was, I think you said one of the people that you had worked with in a different poker room recommended that they hire you, and it just worked out, right? And it's because you were very patiently persistent.
Yeah, persistent is a big part of it. I would go in there and talk to any of the supervisors that would talk to me, and hey, are you looking for you're hiring, and blah blah blah, and eventually, you know, and this does work that way. If somebody recommends you very highly, they're so much more likely to give you a call. And this woman that I had worked with at Miami Highlight was working there. She gave me a very strong recommendation. They called me up. They hired me over the phone, no audition.
That's right. You didn't even do an audition there.
How good her recommendation was.
Yeah, I forgot.
That's how much I impressed her. I don't know which it was, but yeah, I never did an audition at the office.
So speaking of impression, what was your first impression of me working at Calder?
Really?
Yes. Let's hear it. It's story time, Jerry. Be honest. No, it doesn't matter.
All right. So when I went for my audition, I was a little bit nervous because I had only done them at school. And there was this tall, sort of nerdy-looking guy walking around with a clipboard making notes. And I mean, my initial reaction was that I wanted to smash him in the face because I knew he was taking notes on everybody, and I didn't know what he was saying about me. But whatever it was, I had a feeling I wasn't going to like it. So yeah, I thought. I mean, you were very quiet. You didn't say much. You were almost sneaky. And is there anything worse than a sneaky nerd? Jeez.
So the thing that Jerry's describing, right? We had over 300 auditions that we had lined up to open a poker room in South Florida, and Jerry was one of them, right? And what was I doing? I was doing my absolute best to gather all the info that I needed in order to know who to hire and who not to, and all that type of stuff. And so the sneakiness, you're dead on with that. I could not let anyone see my clipboard. I couldn't let people see what I was writing. Then they and everyone's trying to see it. Everybody.
I know. I tried.
And the thing that I didn't know that. So the thing that I would do while I'm auditioning people is we would just sort of move people through, and it would be like I'd sit on, I think it was a stool. Man, it was uncomfortable. And just take notes as everybody
around, as I recall. It seemed like you were mostly walking around.
Oh, that's right.
Trying not to be seen. So yeah. That's where I got the sneaky from, you know.
But then eventually we ended up working together. And did the impression change at all?
Not really. No, I listen. It took me a while to get the hang of Marc Shumsker. I will say that. And what I came to find out, which I could have never expected, was that he has a pretty remarkable sense of humor. But when I first met him, when he was doing his sneaky note-taking nerd thing, I disliked him intensely. I really did. I felt like, look, this guy's judging you, you know? So eventually, when I did get hired, mostly during the time I was chip runner, we had a lot of interaction. And, he would goof on me and I would goof on him back. And he would do things like, he would walk by me and go, "Hey, Jerry." And I go, "Yeah, what?" Just saying, "Hey."
That's the line.
In a manner that makes you think that it warrants a response, which of course, he's an idiot sometimes. That's all.
Well, I have some footage that proves that I'm an idiot sometimes. I'm going to actually.
We need the proof.
I'm going to show some footage of some of the outtakes of us from the very beginning. Don't worry, it's nothing it's not cringeworthy for you. For me, it's a little bit of cringeworthy, but it'll be worth it. I'm going to show that in a second.
All right.
But so for me, my mentality when I was hiring people was I just want to know. I want the information. I'm not there to be friendly at that moment. But you might not know that once you do get a job in a place where I'm a supervisor or working in some capacity, I'm incredibly friendly and I have a very dry sense of humor. And I just want it to be fun for me and for everybody else all the time. And so it's cool that you got to explain the experience.
It became apparent, but it took a little while.
It did.
It took, maybe a month or two. But finally, when I got it, it was appealing. And it was easy to become friends.
So here's something that I got right here. I'm going to show this, and this is just the actual shuffle video. So I want to show, the shuffle video has 880 something thousand views. You and I are pretty happy with that, and this is what the beginning of it looks like, right? Hi, my name is Marc Shumsker, and welcome to Truepokerdealer.com. In this video, I will be showing you how to shuffle the cards like a professional casino dealer. In order to do that, I'll take you through the shuffle so you can see what it looks like. Then after that, we'll go step by step and slow it down so you can learn the steps yourself. And then there's a follow-up video. All right, so you get the idea, right? So now, if somebody wants to truly appreciate Jerry, you gotta watch this, right? And if you really want to see what it was like for him working with me. So they use real terms like cut. Yeah, start is fine. Go. Yeah. Straight your time. Oh yeah. That's what I was going like this, but you couldn't see me. No, it's true. Hi, my name is Marc Shumsker, and welcome to Truepokerdealer.com. In this video, I will be showing you how to shuffle the cards like a professional casino dealer. In order to do that, I'll take you through the shuffle so you can see what it looks like. Then after that, we'll go step by step and slow it down. So you can see, like, without Jerry, I'm toast, right? Like, I'm literally sitting there with my tie completely crooked right before this video starts, and I have absolutely no idea. And he's there paying attention to absolutely everything. So I've got a couple more outtakes that we can show of different things. But I just want to hear, like, what was it like to set up? I mean, your background in photography made it incredibly helpful. I mean, it was the most helpful thing that I could have possibly ran into, right?
Yeah, well, there were inherent problems. First of all, working in a house as opposed to a studio. This is actually supposed to be an entryway. You can't see it, but the front door is over there, somewhere over there. But anyway, the ceilings are high enough. It's a small space. And what we had to do was we had to create a background, which we used just a plain beige background. And then we didn't, I mean, when I was in the photo business, we used strobes. We didn't really use hot lights. You can't use strobes for film. So we had to buy some hot lights, and I had to have a couple that I owned renovated so they would work. And it took a while to set up the lighting. And I look at it now and I think the lighting looks pretty good considering. I mean,
yeah, this was 2011 when we did a lot of the filming.
Yeah,
and back then it was much harder to get good stuff.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, it worked out fine, but I mean, I know I could have done it better given the proper tools and the proper background and a bigger space and all of that. But for what we had to work with, I thought it was pretty good.
And if you see me here, like you can see my hands up top, right? Why? Because we had a boom with an H4n zoom with an audio thing up top. The boom is just like hanging up there. So there's all this stuff going on. There's huge light stands off to the side. I think we had a screen that you had cut down and put fabric over in order to diffuse the light, in order to get the shot correctly. I learned what barn doors are on lights and all this type of crazy stuff that, like, I would have had absolutely no idea. That sheet that we have back there behind this shot was we had to steam that by hand, if I remember right.
Yes, and if you remember, we stapled it to the wall.
Yeah, we did.
And I still have the staple hole because I have not repainted since that time.
Wow,
and
I forgot about
my staples still stuck in there. I mean, I don't go looking for them, but
that sheet was monstrously large too, and it's still big enough.
Gigantic. I mean, the distance that we had to cover was, I would say, almost 20 feet. That one piece of cloth is at least 20 feet long.
It was. I think it might have been 20 by 8 or something.
Yeah, yeah, it could have been.
So I thought that was pretty funny. Let me show. Were you able to hear me while I was talking? In this, does the sound pick it up?
You mean on the video you're showing?
Yeah, just want to make. All right, cool. I'm gonna play this. This is about 59 seconds, and it's. I think it's funny enough.
Okay.
You hear Jerry saying "rolling" at the beginning.
Hang on, you're sitting up a little bit taller than you were. Yeah, that's right. A quick adjustment.
So you saw that my head was cut off.
That was my only screen appearance, by the way. Or one, two.
Here's me. Young away.
All right, pick your head up and look right at me. See, you keep looking down, and I keep framing according to that, and it's not good.
Oh, that's it. Make faces at me. Good.
Your face. I would use that if I were you.
So you said that too.
Alright, I'm still rolling.
Turn on. Okay, so turn on. Turn on. Nope, you didn't stop.
Stop. Where's stop?
No, it looks like stop.
Shut up.
I'm sure you said shut up to me a handful of times, and I probably deserved every one of them.
I'm ready to say it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we had like, there's all kinds of things that happen and go right and go wrong. And I mean,
what I would stress is that, and we did this over how long a period of time? 4, 5, 6 weeks? I don't remember exactly.
it was pretty back to back. I did my best to outline everything for the videos, and it ended up for a long time, True Poker Dealer was just the mechanics, because what we realized was it's very hard to get a group of people all in sync perfectly to do the procedures and the rules where you have actual players at the table, which is why the course that I made this past summer that's up and available for people to learn to deal poker was done just with me, because it's very hard to get people to come in. Actually, I have a good example of that here. We tried a few times to get different things, and it would sort of come out weird and like this.
I had forgotten about this.
Rolling.
What are you doing off of the computer?
Because if I stay back here, I get a better gist of what's going on. This way, I'm facing away from the action.
Take 2 for stuff.
Action.
What's that music?
It's always something, right? I don't remember what that was. I think I might have had my phone somewhere.
I don't remember what it was either, but I remember those 2 girls.
Yeah, BV and Gio. I adore them still. They're awesome. I want to show this one too. What's that? Yeah, I still talk to them.
Yeah, good.
Let's see. I want to show this too. This is funny. I mean, this is the type of stuff that we do and we try to set up. Victor now is the GM at TCH Dallas.
We had thought we had fixed that.
Survivor. Actually, I got another one in there.
We pulled there was a blue card in there too.
Yeah, I'm cutting it.
So I mean, this was the type of thing that there's a lot of stuff that goes into actually making this type of content. It takes a lot of time. There's so much footage that we never used.
If we were going to do that right, we would have had a crew of 10 people
Mm-hmm.
to do it right.
And that's the thing that having done it and been there and all that stuff. So now, just real quick, can you say what was it like when the table first showed up? Everything was at your house, right?
Yeah.
So what was it like when the table first showed up at your house? The chairs, the chips.
It was exciting as shit, I have to say. When they brought in the table and the pedestals that it rests on, I was just blown away how beautiful the table was. Just so really, I mean, it's a centerpiece of my house now. You walk in, it's the first thing you see. I mean, I don't hold home games or any of that stuff because I don't want to mess the table up. But it's just a beautiful piece. I had originally thought to maybe put a pool table in this room, but it turns out that it's just not big enough. But for a poker table, it's perfect. And in case you didn't know, you can't have it back.
Yeah, well, I do know that, and I would never take it from you anyway. That table at your house just feels right in so many different ways. This is a picture that I took, a couple of years ago of it there, and look at that. It's just set up. It's just sitting there nicely, and you can see you're actually sitting at the table right now, and it's just so nice. I remember when all the equipment showed up, like the chairs came in huge boxes. We had to take everything apart. The table was brought by Danny. He used to make poker tables as a business. I wish he still did because he's great at it.
Yeah, I'm sorry he's no longer in business because he made this is a beautiful table.
Yeah, I was so happy with it. And the chips, it was really cool getting all these chips too. Unfortunately, after about 2 years, we didn't know that we were supposed to oil them and they just started to crumble. But that's why the only reason I don't recommend these chips is because of that. Otherwise, I'd be telling people to get them all the time.
They've been great except for that, but they do, they chip off, little pieces chip off.
So let's jump to some comments for a moment. We got a question too, and between the two of us, it'll be fun to answer some of these.
Okay.
So let's see. Chad says, all of Marc's work is awesome. I love the videos you made. Thanks for making great videos, Jerry. So a little shout out to you as well.
I just wanted to say, when I started to say about the time that we took to do this, that there were lots of problems and lots of things that we had to redo, but we had so much fun in the entire process. It was just, it was like waking up and not being able to wait to get to work.
Yeah, and it was like a combination of, it took a lot of energy, but it was super fun to do it all.
Yeah, yeah.
And
a lot of it had to do with the fact that we were doing it on our own and struggling, and the struggle is part of the process. And how long did we work on that lighting before I said, okay, we're ready? I mean, at least 2 or 3 days. I
remember sitting in that chair and feeling like I had ADD, even though I don't. Like, just like sitting in that chair as you had to get it to hit the side of my face properly, and then get it to bounce off the ceiling and light everything evenly, and all this stuff that I just couldn't have imagined was a real thing, but it was worth it. I mean, people tell me all the time, Jerry.
We did that all with 4 lights.
Yeah. And people tell me all the time that it's amazing that these videos from 2012 are still really worth watching today. But it's totally true, and that is credited to the effort and presentation and stuff like that as much as anything.
I'm surprised it holds up as well as it does, but it does. It holds up.
Yeah, it certainly does. So we do have a question here. It says, Jerry, as a dealer, what is the biggest controversy you have had to deal with in your career, and what was the outcome of that controversy? Interesting.
All right. Well, I got a story.
Let's do it.
All right. So this actually happened when I was chip runner. It was within the first 6 months that I worked at Calder, and Marc was supervising that day. And we had, I think it was table number 6 or 7. I can't remember exactly, but it was a full table. Don't remember what the game was, but they were, some of the patrons were a little elderly, I'll put it to you that way. And at some point, one of the gentlemen sitting at the table, and I think he was sitting in seat number 6 or 7, gets up to go to the bathroom. And I noticed that the front of his pants are completely wet.
Oh no, this one.
And I look at his chair, and there's a puddle in the chair. And I'm thinking he peed in his pants. I don't know what else I was supposed to think. So I call my supervisor, Marc Shumsker, and I say, the guy wet in the bathroom. And I told him the story. So when he comes back, he sits down in the puddle, as I recall. I'm not sure, but I don't think anybody cleaned it up at that point. And Marc goes over and says, can we have a chat? And he pulls him off the table, which is one of the things that I like best about Marc as a supervisor. He didn't address anybody at the table, said, come on over here, I want to talk to you for a minute. And so he addressed and he said, listen, what's the deal? You can't be urinating at the table. And he said, no, I spilled the beer. I spilled it in my lap, And Marc, being the kind of guy that he is, he said, okay, second chances and all that sort of thing. 3 hours later, the guy gets up again. He's all wet in the front, and there's a puddle in the chair. And at that point, Marc said, you're going to have to find some other place to play poker. You can't play here anymore. Okay. And that's not, I've heard worse stories than that, but that was one of my awful ones.
The realization that we were wrong, or that I was wrong, and that he had actually peed himself was not pleasant to receive. Like that, the moment of realization as a supervisor, when you allow somebody to fool you and you realize that you've been fooled, oh, that's the worst. That said, I tell you guys all the time, I've kicked a lot of people out as a supervisor, a lot of people. And you got to get it right in the end is the only way I can say it. And what do you do? That's what Jerry said, can I talk to you over here? You don't want to embarrass them.
Right.
And you let the person know I can see that your chair is wet again. I don't even remember. I know that my normal way of doing this is to tell the person something neutral, right? It's like, your chair's wet again. We're going to have to ask you to leave, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of that simple. And I totally forgot that you were the one that noticed that in the first place. I remember that now.
I remember it very clearly.
I'm sure you do. Gosh.
So I had a response to your comment that you said a second ago that you've kicked a lot of people out of a lot of casinos. That's my dream. People to say, you got to go now.
Well, you get the benefit of, you have security around you, you have surveillance watching and all this stuff. It's sometimes pretty scary, not going to lie, but there's definitely that satisfying, you're disturbing everybody and you're not going to do that anymore feeling, for sure. So
well, yeah, you can't allow it, right?
My goodness. Greg says, what is your position on call-in cash game wait lists? Jerry, you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't really know that I have an opinion on that. I mean, it's like if a guy calls in and puts his name on a list and they call his name and he's not there, well, then obviously they take it off. But I don't really know how that works, whether or not they will hold that or put it at the bottom of the list or what. But for the most part, I don't like it. If you're not there, you shouldn't be on a list.
So my position in calling cash games is it sort of depends on the location of the room, how many other poker rooms are around it. It's like, I used to go to Foxwoods and I would drive from the Boston area. It was about an hour and 30 minutes to get down there. And, driving down to Foxwoods for 90 minutes, it would have been nice if I could put my name on a list. So that when I got there, if I timed it right, I didn't have to wait, because I'm already waiting so much. That said, I see it really just depends on how it's managed. I liked the way that it was done in a room that I worked in recently, where they would put your name at the top of the list when you call in. And when you get called, if you're not there, you get about, X amount of time, right? And it does keep a timer up and then you take them off. It is more work for the staff, but especially with Table Captain, which is Poker Atlas's version of Bravo nowadays, I hear that it's gotten a lot easier to do this stuff. But man, it also stinks when someone doesn't realize that it's a thing and someone just walks up right in front of them and takes a seat. So my official position is it's sort of geography dependent based on what people are used to. And I don't like to have hard, fast rules about stuff like this, because there's tradition in certain places is what I want to say. And what people get used to ends up becoming acceptable across the board for that area.
Well, I would agree that geographically, it really depends on where the casino is and how busy the casino is. I mean, if you call into the Hard Rock and try and get on a list when they've got 37 tables filled and they've got waiting list of 20 or 25 people, I don't think they take your name. I don't know what they do about that. But if you're a place that has 5 tables and 2 of them are full and there's another one that's a half a table, why wouldn't you put somebody's name on a list? It just depends.
Yeah, and to that point, it also has to be communicated very clearly. If it's a call-in, you want it to be clear that it's a call-in, because otherwise people get confused. Why is that staying up there, staying up there, staying up there? But yeah, I guess at the end of the day, having run poker rooms that use call-ins, I have been a supervisor for consecutive 2.5 years at one specific room where we did take call-ins, and because of the way that we communicated it and handled it, I never had an issue with it personally. So I feel pretty good about, if you can do it well, you can certainly do it. So right over here, Joel says, hello, Marc and Jerry. I flopped a 9-5-4 at 2 a.m. on a 1-2 table. Being in South Florida, I jokingly said 9-5-4. A woman, not even in the hand, scolded me and demanded I call the floor. How big of a mistake was this? You're the guest today. I'm happy to have you go first for all of these. Or
I would have thrown that woman right out of the room. What nerve? Come on. Is that such a faux pas? I don't know. Is it?
Well, look, when the dealer reads the board. I think you're saying, when you say I flopped, I think you're saying that you're the dealer. Yeah. If she demanded that you call the floor,
Oh, I thought he was a player. I thought he was a player.
Yeah, as the dealer, you don't ever want to do that, and it is definitely tempting to be to like bring humor to the table and all that stuff. And some people really like it, but it's, let's put it this way: I'm not going to say that you can't have fun and you can't make this joke, but there's a potential consequence every time you do it. And I teach dealers to never cross these types of lines where you read the board, because it does give away information to other players. Does that information likely change anything in this particular hand where the cards are clearly on the board? No, but fundamentally it violates the 1 player per hand rule, which at the end of the day, as a dealer, all of your instincts should be rooted to that. So, I mean,
I have to agree with that. It's like you're not supposed to, at least in my mind, I don't think you're not a narrator. You're not going to say, oh, 954 rainbow. Nobody's going to say that. I mean, no dealer's going to say that, and probably shouldn't. Again, you could be giving information to people. It's like if you have 4 hearts on the board, you're not going to say 4 to a flush. Somebody might not see it. That's information that you don't want to put out there. It's not your place to put it out there.
Now, in this case, it's one of those things where, I mean, you shouldn't do it. You did it. It was probably kind of funny and fun. Just sort of take it on the wrist. You call the floor. By the way, anytime someone says call the floor, just call the floor. Like, let her feel like she's right. It doesn't even matter if she's right or wrong. And at the same time, we'll send Jerry to the table to stand behind her and stare her down for being so extra.
Come to the table, I'm throwing her out. I'm telling her.
I gotcha. All right, last one, and then we're gonna jump back to what we were talking about. Greg says, coming back to your story, if someone at my table does that, can I, as a player, request a table change? You can request a table change anytime you ever want. The only exception I've ever heard to that is some rooms during COVID. But if you believe that a player has peed themselves, you are absolutely entitled to exit that area. And I hope that if you know that that's what it is, you're super clear with the supervisor about that, so that there's no doubt. And we don't want a player to stay when they're doing that. I mean, what does that mean, right? It means that they're completely out of it and getting it on the floor. And I mean, these chairs are made out of leather. It doesn't mean that we want to be cleaning them. I lied. There's one more little comment. In our room, if you're on the call-in list, you have an hour and a half to come in the room and check in. So, to that point, a consistent rule for whatever room does call-ins is really important. And that's one of the issues that I've had with call-ins and other places. The supervisors do preferential treatment, and they allow sometimes players that they like to manipulate the rules. If you're consistent with the rules and enforcing it, it makes it a lot easier. If you can't do that and you can't get your staff to be consistent and not play favorites, I think maybe eliminating call-ins is a good idea. But that is part of what it comes down to. So, Jerry, anything to say on that? Because I'm going to take us back to the Making a True Poker Dealer now.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Cool. So the first thing I want to say is I would always try to get it done in one take. I don't know that that was smart or not, but did that drive you crazy? I feel like I've always wanted to ask you that.
Well, you didn't succeed very often.
No.
I'm not even trying to be funny, but the way that you work, and admittedly, you got much better over the course of the time you spent in front of the camera. But very often you would start, I would say action, you would start and really not know exactly what you wanted to say or how you wanted to say it. More importantly, how you wanted to say it. You had the concept in your mind of what you wanted to get across, but you hadn't really, you were ad-libbing. And sometimes, most of the time, that doesn't work. So, what you do is you do it again, you refine it, you should put this in, leave that out, and that's why you have somebody watching it, I can't really say I was much of a director, but I had my eye on you and making sure that you didn't repeat things too much or stutter too much, or too many long pauses when you're thinking about what you're going to say, that sort of thing.
And after each take, so there were a lot of takes, because these videos, if you go back and look at them, a lot of them are in the 8 to 10 minute range, and I had to basically do a chunk of that all in one take in order for me to be satisfied whether or not that made sense. And so after we would do a take, you would have to give me the feedback, was that good or not? And you would be the final say for the most part. If I got I think that was pretty good, I felt good about it. I didn't feel good about it until then. And I thought that was, first of all, I really appreciated having that. I mean, it was phenomenally helpful because you're listening to it, not the one saying it.
And listen, you can't see yourself and you can't really hear yourself when you're thinking about how you're, making your point. So yeah, you need somebody.
But let's talk about how you would give feedback, because I think this is really funny. You had a line that you told me 3 months later what it actually meant, where you would say,
well, let me tell you how it started. It started when I was a still photographer, and I would get a new model in who was either nervous or uncomfortable or wasn't quite getting the job done, and you don't want to criticize her. I mean, you got hair and makeup people, you got assistants, you got all kinds of people standing around. You don't want to criticize. So what I used to do is I started out with a plus and then I went to a minus. I would say, you're doing great. You're just doing great. There's just one little thing that I want you to change. And then I would change everything.
Yes.
And
so I'd be
but they didn't feel put upon. They didn't feel like I would criticize them. And that's important, because you get a model, or in your case, you get Mark pissed off at you, he's not going to perform very well. He's just not.
So intelligent. So, for you watching, if you're creating content or anything like that, and you have somebody that's the one that's creating the content and you're monitoring them, Jerry's line, you're doing great. You're really doing great. Just a couple of things or just one little thing. I would be sitting there and hear him say that. And I'd be like, oh, I'm doing great. Exactly. One thing. And then, before I know it, a bunch of stuff changed, but it doesn't matter because I feel like I'm doing great. Those types of lines.
Except for one or two little things.
Right. Thank you. So it was months later, you used to tell me that, months later you told me I've got this line that I use, and I'm like, you've done that to me.
Yeah, well, I didn't want you to know while I was doing it.
I totally understand and I respect that.
But, look, it makes sense, doesn't it? Like you give them a plus, you give them a compliment, and then you do what you want to do. And nobody gets mad.
Well, listen, your experience as a photographer was super helpful. One example, we joke about it a lot in the shuffle video. After you do the wash, or after I did the wash in the shuffle video, I collect the cards is what I would say. And you were the one listening and you could hear, hey, it sounds like you've said it 1,000 times. Like, try to sound more natural, right? You would make fun of me. Collect the cards. Like,
we had done maybe 6 or 7 takes. And eventually, it was like, spread the cards, collect the cards. And once you say it 4 or 5 times, it becomes as opposed to spread the cards out and then you collect the cards. You would say, spread the cards out, collect the cards. Like you've said it before and it doesn't sound right. It sounds like you've said it 1 million times before.
Totally.
Little things like that make a big difference, though.
They do. And, I'm super appreciative that you were a part of this. It made a huge difference. So now let's talk about your shuffle, because this was really interesting. Speaking of the shuffle video, right? You mentioned at one point that the shuffle video actually helped you. Creating the shuffle video with me helped you. Do you mind explaining that?
I don't mind. When I was in school, they would teach us the way they wanted us to shuffle. And basically, you hold the deck and your little fingers would control the outside of the deck. And I used to say, my hands are too big, I can't do that. I just can't set it up that way. And I would set up the shuffle where my hands would be flat on top of the deck and I'd ripple and push it together to be fine. But I couldn't get those little fingers on the outside. And then one day we were doing the shuffle video and I was watching, and you had gone, you had set up an editing table and you were doing some editing. And while you're editing, I was just shuffling and over and over and over. And eventually those little fingers got to the outside of the deck, and I actually accomplished the shuffle that they were trying to teach me to do that I was saying I couldn't do.
So just as a recap, because I think this is fascinating, you were already a dealer at this point.
Yeah.
And you were shuffling, and nobody in the poker room was giving you a hard time about it. But it was something that you said bothered you, right?
Yep. I didn't. It hurts my feelings to say I just can't do that. It just makes me feel inadequate. And in this case, it wasn't true. I was comfortable doing it the way I was doing it. I didn't really want to change it. It was fine. Nobody was complaining, that sort of thing, you know. But at the same time, it's like, why can't I do that? And it turned out that I could. And now my shuffle's pretty good. Not as good as Mark's, but pretty good.
Your shuffle's great, Jerry. We, we'll talk about this a little bit, but we still play poker on that table periodically. And
yes, we do.
Yeah, and so you get plenty of practice with that. So, I appreciate you sharing that story too, because one of the primary reasons, I didn't talk about this much, but this is super appropriate. One of the main reasons that we made True Poker Dealer, from my perspective, was as a shift manager, I was a shift manager at the time, it drove me crazy that there was no resource available online to help people correct their mechanics and their procedure. And so, I had a lot of dealers that worked in the poker room with me, and I was responsible for their dealing at the end of the day, right? I was responsible for everything in the room while I was a manager, and there was nowhere I could send them to make corrections to themselves. So that was part of why we decided to make this in the first place. And it's super funny in retrospect that it actually gave you that thing. I didn't really think about your shuffle at the time. I remember thinking that your shuffle was less professional than mine, for example, but I wasn't thinking that it was wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to go back to what you just said about no resource to teach people mechanics. I ended up going to two poker schools. The first one that I went to, there was no poker school. It was the students were teaching each other. The guy had just quit or he was fired, I don't know what happened. And I was there for 3 or 4 weeks with no instructor. Then they finally brought in an instructor.
Yeah, I was just telling you to move your hand because the sound doesn't come with it there, for whatever reason. Okay.
Yeah. So the instructor they brought in was basically a blackjack instructor, and he was not a poker dealer, not a poker teacher. So I had to end up going to a second school. So that just reinforces the fact that there are no resources out there. A couple of poker schools, that are okay. But I think our videos are as competent and capable of teaching you how to deal as any poker school. I really do. You just have to put in the time. That's the important part, putting in the time to practice it.
Well, and since then, they've actually become a staple for the mechanics for a lot of people that run dealer schools. They just have people go to the True Poker Dealer YouTube site, or what I'm trying to say. People go to True Poker Dealer and learn the mechanics. It blew me away when I found that out like 5 years ago.
That's because the videos are good, especially when it comes to mechanics. They're really good.
And one of the things that Jerry helped me with to make these videos good, and I'm going to admit this, I don't think I've ever actually said this. After 3 videos, we did the intro video, the shuffle video, and then the shuffle train with me. People were making fun of the way that I looked, that my eyes were droopy, I had bags under my eyes, and I actually wore makeup that I got from my friend Yana, which she was nice enough to show me how to put it on in order to not look like a crazy tired person. And I liked, you used to make fun of me. Do you remember making fun of me for putting on makeup for these videos?
I remember making fun of you. I can't specifically say it was about that, but I'm always making fun of you. You know that.
Yeah, I literally used to sit in the bathroom with, I think it was like a makeup paintbrush or whatever they are, and I would figure out how to put it on, and then I figure out how to even it, and I kept having this thought, I can't believe that this is what I'm doing right now. Which nowadays I wouldn't care about stuff like that, but I still cared about being a guy and all that stuff back then, and just, now I'm much more authentic, and hey, I need makeup to do something, I'll do it, although I haven't actually worn makeup for any of this stuff lately because there's so much live stuff. But I thought that was interesting, right? A little bit of insight into what it takes to make something look smooth. You know, because I remember like it was yesterday. I went on the comments on Truepokerdealer. This was when it was brand new, and I was not sure. We weren't sure how the response was going to be to any of this stuff. We felt good about it, but you never know. And somebody was telling me that I look like I'm high all the time, and that was in one of the comments, and I was just like, oh gosh. And so I think
the fact that in those days you had not touched anything. There's no way you were high.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was sort of fascinating to realize. And I remember, I think I actually talked about it. You know, I say that you made fun of me, but you also worked with so many different people and models and makeup artists and all that stuff. And I think your original response was, you know, it wouldn't hurt anything type of thing. That's what I think. You know?
Actually, I wanted to backtrack just for a minute.
Sure.
There was, when we were talking about making the videos, there was a line that I used on you that I got from a good friend of mine who used to say it to his kids. And what would happen was we would do it again, and we'd do it again, and we'd do it a third time, and I would make suggestions, and we'd do it a fourth time, and we would still do it the same way, and I would make suggestions again. And we would do it a fifth time, and we still do the same thing that I'm trying to make corrections, and then finally I would just say, fine, just do it the stupid way.
Yeah.
Actually, urge you to change it to what I wanted you to do.
The audio went out for a second, but well, I think people can hear it, but just in case, I've heard this from you so many times. Fine, do it your own stupid way. And every time you say that, I'm just like, well, at least now I can do it my own stupid way. Like,
I mean, it's all said in jest, but I was just trying to get your attention. You know, the problem is once you say it a dozen times, it doesn't have an effect anymore. You know.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
It's one of my favorite lines.
Let's see. So let's get back to some questions here for a little. Joel says, "Thank you for your insight and feedback. Appreciate that." Greg says, "Has anyone ever started a fight in any poker?"
Really?
That's
a legitimate question.
He wants to know if anyone's ever started, no, like a real fight. Which I know the answer to this. Were you there for any fights?
I don't think so, but I remember seeing one that somebody recorded. I think it was at the Hard Rock, where one guy was just pounding on another guy, and they arrested him. But I know there haven't been any that kind of heavy-duty fights in any room I've been.
I've seen some stuff. One thing that I saw, I watched this both in person and on surveillance as a shift manager. Two people in the cashier line started getting into it with each other, and one of them took a full swing and missed the guy before security started running over there, and then got ejected for that. I was pretty glad he missed him because you could see there was a lot behind that punch. Another thing that I've seen that blew me away, that I watched this in surveillance footage later, there was somebody at probably 4 a.m. that was really upset with another person. It was at the border between inside and outside the poker room, and they had these huge heavy metal stanchions that had the red tape going between them. Mm-hmm. This guy picked up one of these huge heavy metal stanchions, and he started going at the other one, and the guy got away because the thing was too heavy to chase him down. But that would have done some serious.
They're very heavy.
And then there was another time where I'm thinking if there was another fight. I don't know. I remember one time when there was a fight in the room. I heard about this one later. There was a poker player who had actually jumped up on the poker table to cheer on the people fighting. I mean, just like some of the craziest stuff that you can see happens late at night. Now, all of these people get kicked out, right? Or at least I hope so. I guess I don't know technically that person was kicked out. But, I mean, can you imagine being a poker dealer and seeing somebody jump up on your table? And I will tell you this. The reason I ended up hearing about that and seeing it after the fact was because the dealer did not even get a supervisor. It was like they were watching footage after the fact when the player jumped up on the table. The fight was probably 2 tables away, okay? The dealer literally just sat there and watched the fight And with the players standing on their table after everything happened, it was like, oh, there was a fight in the room. And they were watching the fight because you got to watch, like whenever something like that happens in surveillance, you have to go through all of that stuff and sort of break down who did things that yeah. And so when they saw that and they're like, the dealer didn't even say anything. I mean,
did that guy get thrown out? The guy who jumped on the table?
No. I don't know the answer to that, and I'm also not 100% sure if my memory remembers. It might have been a woman that jumped up on the table all excited like that. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was a woman that jumped up on the table. But that don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But yeah, so the answer is yeah, they happened. And then the next one, Greg says, room, haha, just hit my enter key by accident. Oh, gotcha. And what happened, I don't remember what we were talking about at that time. Unfortunately, let's see. In our room, we go by WSOP regs. So that's awesome. WSOP is a great, great, great thing to follow. Just like with a lot of these things, it doesn't cover absolutely everything most of the time, but that's a good way to go. You know, it's like 80-something pages of information.
I still have mine somewhere. They give it out to every new dealer, the regulations.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is it printed? Is that how you have it?
Yes, they gave me. I don't know if it's 80 pages, but it's thick.
Here we have so true. I've seen some crazy stuff. LOL in the poker room, and Greg says it sounds like an awful lot of paperwork for both security and eye in the sky. You have no idea. In order for them to break down all of the things that happen during a fight like that, they need to watch it all. They need to like section off the video. I believe the people who were actually fighting for it to get that severe did get arrested. There are police officers in a lot of poker rooms that are on, and I know with that one there was 2 at any given time that they were paying, whatever the detail rate was to have them on property. And I mean, this was in Miami Gardens, Florida, which is not the best place to be from a crime standpoint, right? But I mean, in a casino, there's a lot of the footage and coverage, but it's so much paperwork. Supervisor, shift manager, dealers all have to write statements. Security has to write statements. It's just a whole bunch of stuff happens after an incident like that, which is pretty funny. So, all right, so now we're going to transition to Jerry as a dealer specifically. One thing about you that I love, and you tell this stuff so well, is you got a lot of lines as a dealer. A lot of lines that you say that they, when I hear you say it, it's one of those things like I've either learned something or I wish I had the balls to say that.
Well, look, I made a list of them, and some of them you can say, and some of them you really can't say. I mean, there are things that will get your point across without saying, call the floor because I don't like the way you talk. I mean, little things like somebody's giving you a hard time or giving another player a hard time. You just go, come on, man. And sometimes that'll just stop it in its tracks because people know when they're being stupid.
Right. So, and it's actually to the point of like you saying, come on, man. Now I teach this in my course. Okay. I teach very clearly, bring your own personality to being a dealer. Why? Yeah. Because it makes it much better for everybody, and your personality includes some of this type of stuff, right? So picture Jerry sitting there. Come on, man. One of those things, if he says that periodically, like what does that communicate, right? He can certainly pull that off. Give us another one. Give us one of your favorites.
Well, I only said this one time, but I did say it one time, and it was just one of those guys. There's usually one at every poker table, or at least throughout the course of the day, you're going to have one table that's going to have one guy that doesn't like you for whatever the reason. It doesn't really matter. And so I said to this guy one time after he was ragging on me, it seemed like every hand, and I finally looked at him. I said, I'm really trying to like you, but you're making it so hard for me. And it's something you can say because it doesn't say, hey, look, you're being a butthead. You can't really use that. But it's a gentle thing that says, you're not acting right. And
so To the point, I'm going to say, okay, this one gets a ding. Yes, you can say this one as a dealer as long as you understand you have to play it off as a fun joke. Right. So I'm trying to like you, but you're making it real hard.
Well, you know, essentially what you're saying is stop being an asshole, but you can't say that.
Exactly.
You're making it tough, you know, and they know it. You don't have to say it. They know it. But when you verbalize it then makes them understand. Yeah, all right, maybe I could be a little less of a jerk. Maybe.
So there's another line now, and I want to be the one to say it here, and I want you to tell the story behind it. But before I do that, I do want you guys to know, as a poker dealer, poker players that are not winning are gonna get on your case, and they're gonna blame you, and they're gonna give you a hard time, and they're gonna come up with whatever story they have in their head about why their luck is the way that it is. And if you're a part of that story, they're gonna tell you about it because they feel entitled to, right? And so you've told me that you said this. You'd think that if you really thought I controlled the cards, you'd be nicer to me. I think that's hilarious, Jerry.
Well, it's one of those things you can actually say. If you think that I'm these cards, why would you want to yell at me? Why would you want to? Because then I'm going to give you bad cards. What's wrong with you? Be nice to me, and I'll give you good cards. And another line that I actually didn't write down, but I've used many, many times, is when a guy he's just not getting anything. He's throwing his cards, on the table and whatever. I remember I said to him one time, I said, I'm going to give you good cards. Maybe not today, but I'm going to give you good cards eventually, so you keep coming back. And that's the way poker works anyway. You get deuce 3 offsuit so many times. Eventually, you're going to get ace king or ace or king king or whatever. It's just the way the card. I mean, it's all random.
I like that. I like that one too. And I mean, and like Jerry said, you can absolutely say these. You think that if I control the cards, you would be nicer to me is a great response because it's very neutral in terms of
it is.
Yeah, the way that they feel, but it also really gets the point across. And the other one that you said that you had that is right on the same line as that is, if I could control these cards, I wouldn't be working here.
It's true. And the follow-up to that is, I'd be having a home game and you'd be invited.
Exactly. I think it's really interesting with that line too, because a couple of weeks ago I had 2 magicians on, Magician Macedo being the headliner, and we were talking about whether or not a magician would be able to beat casino surveillance and actually control the cards. And I swear the 2 of these guys made me feel like they could do it, even though they said they couldn't. Like, just it's like, but I mean, so to that point,
I wouldn't want either one of those guys dealing at my table.
Unless, right, exactly.
Even with a cut card, people can deal off the bottom of the deck. They can, second card deal. Mechanics are amazing. They're as good as any magician out there. It's talking about sleight of hand. It's remarkable, actually.
So do you have any other lines that you've used over the years that you'd like to share with us that even if there are lines that you don't think are acceptable, but maybe the things that you wish you could have said or something like that?
This one you really can't say, but I've thought it many times. The line is, I accept responsibility for giving you bad cards. You don't mind if I keep giving them to you, right?
Yeah, that one's probably a little satisfying, but not.
Yeah, you really can't.
Acceptable.
All the rest of them, I think we covered all the really good ones. If I control the cards, you wouldn't be getting any good ones. It's all based on the same kind of thing.
Well, and to give you even more credit, I didn't really give you any notice for this. I mean, you have a notebook with it. I think it was like an hour and a half before we started. I said, hey, do you have any lines? But over the years, we've joked about a lot of stuff that maybe I'll bring you back. And if you gather some of those up, we can have a fun little things that poker dealers can say session, right? I feel like people like that.
This has been fun, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, absolutely. I do have a couple more things to go through if you have a few more minutes.
Oh, God, I thought we were done.
Not quite, but it sounds like.
All right.
All right, all right. So tell us what it was like being on a ladder recording True Poker Dealer videos.
Well, in order to see the cards on the table, you have to come from an elevated position. And this not being a studio, we didn't have one of those ramp kinds of things, which is essentially what they use for airplanes. It's, it's a staircase thing with a couple of handles and, very broad-based stairs, like 2.5, 3 feet. So you're comfortable on there. And then there's a platform at the top. So you have maybe half a dozen stairs, you get to a platform. We didn't have that. So I was on the next to the top rung of a ladder with my tripod extended as far as it would go. And I would spend like hours up there. I mean, I'd come down, for a break, but for 2 or 3 days, my legs were shaken and sore from being on that ladder. It was no fun. And quite frankly, I wouldn't do it again.
I'm not going to lie. I felt some pressure trying to, I'll take this down. I'm going to show that in a second. I felt some pressure trying to get through stuff quickly. You'll see that in a second. I felt some pressure trying to get stuff done quickly because I knew that you were like up on a ladder balancing, and you were such a good sport about it on the outside. I feel like on the inside, maybe not. I feel like on the inside, you were cursing me out every time I messed up while you're up there.
You said, all right, let's do it one more time.
But yeah, so you saw the thing that was just there. I'm going to show you guys the real reason why I was doing this with Jerry. This is Jerry's cooking, and he has made some incredible dishes that when we would go over to do this stuff, it's just this stuff sort of cooking in the pot. When we would go over and do this stuff, what's that?
That when you showed the process of doing the tofu and all the other stuff.
Yes, yeah.
That picture was a final dish, I think.
I think it's a different one, but
but it looks good.
Jerry, can you just talk about your cooking? Because I literally learned how to cook during creating True Poker Dealer. Like, no joke. I learned how to cook from you. Like, this is some of the stuff that you would make. I still have these pictures.
Yeah, I'm surprised you do, actually. That looks good.
I call this lemonade sauce. What's the real sauce called?
I went to school in New Orleans, and I got a taste of Cajun food, and this is one of the dishes I learned how to make. And part of the reason that I really wanted to learn how to cook is because I seldom get to New Orleans, and wow, that looks good. What is that? Oh yeah, I remember that. I seldom get to New Orleans. And I wanted to eat some jambalaya and some red beans and rice and some gumbo and all that stuff. So I learned how to make it. I think that I got more seriously into cooking once I left the photography business because cooking is such a creative outlet. And working in a poker room, I mean, let's face it, it's a job and it's repetitive. And, there's not much room for creativity unless you're trying to think of something to say to the to the players. But I ended up doing this because I'm a fan of food. I like to eat, and I love to be able to make it myself. And the thing of it is with the pandemic that we have now, it's a great asset to be able to cook really good food at home on your own.
Well, I gotta say, during COVID, it's been sad for me because I've been going to your house like at least once a month the entire time just for dinner and company and like all of this stuff. We play poker on the table. It's like dinner, then poker, then we hang out for a little bit, and it's the coolest experience ever. I would love for you to create a restaurant. I know you'll never do it, but
no, that I'm not doing. I can cook for 4 people, 6 people maybe. A room full of diners, no chance. I wouldn't know where to begin. I have a friend that cooks for 10, 15 people on a regular basis at home. I wouldn't know where to begin. I don't have the equipment for it. You need big pots and pans and all that sort of. But he used to own a restaurant, so he's got some of that stuff.
But this was a part of anytime we would have people come over and do a shoot, like I would literally think to myself, all right, I asked a bunch of friends to come and record. And they would come by, and you would have this incredibly good, incredibly elaborate, well, at least for me, incredibly elaborate meal prepared that everybody would be like, there's nothing that gets people more in the mood to like get to it after eating amazing food, right?
No,
It blew me away.
Listen, if you bring people to anywhere, to a meeting, to your house, whatever, and you don't feed them, at some point they're going to say, "I got to go now." It's part of the deal. It's part of, if you want to call it entertaining, you can call it.
How would that work in the photo business back then?
Oh, we had catering all the time. Catered.
There was catering for everything, huh? Interesting. So this is something that you said to me that I think is so funny. It's totally true. Also, there was one day where you were telling me that you just had a conversation with your ex-wife, maybe, about us coming over for dinner, and she at this point knew. Now I mostly eat plant-based diet, and she asked, "What are you making?" And you said, "Oh, just this," and it had sausage in it, and it had bacon in it. And she's like, "I thought they don't eat like that." And I remember the line that you said. Do you remember what you said to her?
Yeah, I said they're vegetarians, so they come here.
Yeah, exactly. Your food is so good that I just completely abandoned my diet for what that's worth.
Look, if you do that once or twice a month, it's not going to shorten your lifespan. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, now you're sort of getting to the reason that I'm plant-based for the most part. So the last thing that I just want to ask you about before we get to the final comments and questions and then wrap it up. I want to say it was like 8 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, you had decided that you wanted to go back and deal poker again after having retired. And you set yourself up with an audition at Mardi Gras down in South Florida, and you ended up not even doing the audition, if I remember correctly. Can you talk about your decision?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. It turned out that the poker room manager was my teacher in poker dealing school. And not that we really got along that well, but he was a good teacher, a bit of a perfectionist for me, but a good teacher. And, I would see him occasionally around playing a little bit, and then he started to work at Mardi Gras as a dealer, and then he worked his way up to director of the poker room. And I heard that they were hiring, and I was thinking that I was a little bored. I was thinking I might want to go back. So I called him. I don't even know if they were hiring. I called him, and he said, "Yeah, come on in." And I went in, and he asked me a few questions, and he said, "Well, you want to work here? I'll hire you right now on the spot." And I go, "You want me to show you how I deal? I'll show you." He said, "No, it's okay. You want a job? You got it." And I said, "Okay." So he set me up with HR to go and do all my paperwork and all that stuff. And I think I was to report on a Monday or a Tuesday. And I drove over to Mardi Gras. It was about a 35, 40-minute ride. And I got into the parking lot. And I got there early because I don't like to be late for appointments like that. I got to the parking lot, and I called my ex-wife, with whom I'm still very close. And I said, "I'm sitting here in the parking lot, about to go in and sign on for this job, and I just don't want to do it." "Go in there and tell them you're not going to take the job." And I said, "All right." I went in and I talked to the guy who hired me, and I said, "Listen, I just can't. It's not a good time for me, and I just can't take this job." And he said, "I appreciate your coming in person to tell me that, when in fact I was there to go to HR, but I didn't tell him that. I let him think that I made a special trip just to tell him. But the thing of it is that if you're upfront and honest with people, usually that works in your favor, almost always. I could have lied to them and said, "Well, I found another job," or I'm having health issues, or I'm too old, or whatever it was. But I just said, it's not a good time. I'm not sure I want to go back to work right now. And so I didn't go back there. But it was nice to get hired.
That's super interesting. And I've had some people that are early 60s that they're debating whether or not to actually even take the True Poker Dealer course, thinking about them dealing. They say they've actually asked me and reached out to me like and said, is it worth it? I think that as a second career for you, it went pretty well. And
honestly, it was fantastic. It really was. I did it for almost 9 years. I enjoyed it for the most part. There were times when we got to 13 and 14 hours that I wasn't so happy to still be there. But, you know, that's the life of a poker dealer. You work until they can afford to let you go. And if they have more players than they have dealers, you're going to be there until, you know, until such time as the room thins out. But all in all, you know, a friend of mine once said to me, he said, you're very, very lucky because you've had 2 careers and you like them both. And I can't say anymore. I mean, they always say, do what you love. You know, I can't say that I was just as lucky as I could have been. I love doing the photography business. I love the whole thing of organizing shoots and booking locations and booking models and, you know, all of it. And when that sort of slowed down, the fact that I found a second career was phenomenal to me, and I loved it. I really did. I was very lucky.
That's great, and it's in your back pocket if you ever need it. That's how I feel about poker dealing too. Like if I ever need,
I can get a job now if I wanted to. I don't want to, but if I, you know, luckily I'm comfortable in retirement, and luckily I don't have to go into those casinos that, you know, are little beds of you know, germs at the moment. I mean, everybody is being safe as I understand it, but it's just, you know, I don't trust people to be as safe as they say they're being. I'll put it to you that way.
I totally understand that. Greg said, referring back to the lines that you would use as a dealer, he said, that is why I always go out of my way to be nice to dealers. I do that not just by toking well, which is tipping, but by trying to entertain dealers too. And you know what? As someone who's been a dealer and as True Poker Dealer, I say thank you for caring about the dealer, not just tipping them, but also caring about what it's like to be them. It's a really cool thing. Anytime a player brings that.
Understand the kind of stress you can be put under as a dealer. You know, when people are not winning, they are not necessarily very nice, and they think it's your fault. They don't really think it's your fault. They just want to put the blame somewhere.
I have had so many dealers come to me when I've been a supervisor or shift manager, and these dealers come to me in pain asking, how do I get these players to stop? And I work with them. You know, I sit down and I talk through the specific scenarios and I give them insights. And it's like, one of the reasons, people don't always realize this, one of the reasons that there are so many breaks and a break room for dealers is because the dealers got to get it out sometime. They got to go vent. They have to be able to complain about their stories and experiences in order to like let it go. But, you know, Greg, thank you for representing the side of players who make it easier for the dealers. And I mean, ultimately, if all players were more aware of what it's like to be a dealer, the dealers would be better too. You know, how many times have you had a dealer come to your table with a what's known as resting bitch face, right? You know, a lot of it comes from the experience of being a dealer and getting blamed for everything and feeling like it's not fair and all that stuff. Which,
you know, you develop a chip on your shoulder. It's hard not to. It's really hard not to. But that being said, when you come to a table of people who are nice to you, and then this usually happens in the smaller games, you know, the limit games and that sort of thing, you know, 1-2 and 2-2 and 2-4 in those games, because people are not really losing hundreds and hundreds of dollars in those games. So, you know, it's easier to make nice with those people. But, you know, when you go to a 10-25 table and people are, you know, people are down $2,500, $3,000, you know, they get upset, as I would get upset. I don't think I'd take it out on the dealer, but it would be upsetting to lose that kind of money.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the difference, right? Having been a dealer, you realize that here's the thing. Table games is something that has taught people that play casino games that you want to blame the dealer, and there's like, because it's like, yay, you're winning, you know, and it's okay to encourage that, and it sort of comes to poker, and it's this weird vibe. But
It's just a different.
Yeah, it is too. Let's see what's over here. Oh, this is for you, Jerry. Chad says, Jerry, who are your favorite poker pros and least favorite? I guess my favorite players are Phil Hellmuth, Stu Unger, to name a few. My least favorite is Tony G and Daniel Negreanu. I don't know how to spell his last name, but I was able to say it. Jerry, who do you like? And don't be afraid to say Negreanu if you like him.
And then I'll probably be honest. I don't know why I would change at this point. When I was in Las Vegas at the WSOP, I got the deal to a lot of these guys. I never got the Hellmuth. He was the next table, and then the table broke before I got there. But I did deal with Negreanu. I did deal to a couple of amateurs who were well known, like let me see who was there. Jason, what's his name from Seinfeld?
Oh yeah, tell us that story, Jason Alexander.
Jason Alexander. I come to this table and he is like, he's a very familiar guy. He's just, I sat down and he said, "Hey Jerry, how you doing?" And so he used my name and he, whatever. And I kept
George
getting,
Costanza.
huh?
George Costanza, just in case anybody doesn't know which character, yeah.
George can't stand you. So he was very nice and very pleasant, but I kept giving him bad cards. And again, obviously, I don't control the cards. I don't care what anybody thinks. And at some point, he threw the cards back at me. He didn't throw them at me, but folded his hand. He said, "Jerry, didn't we talk about this? I thought that we agreed you were going to give me good cards." And I said, I don't think I called him George. I don't remember. But I said, "Listen, I'm trying really hard, and I'm going to give you good cards. Maybe not today, but I'm going to give you cards eventually." So
didn't you say he did something like Jerry, Jerry, Jerry?
Yes, he did. Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. Didn't we talk about this? And like we've been friends for 100 years or something. There are also some. I dealt to Phil Locke, and he's one of my favorites. I like him, and I like Antonio. And yeah, I don't like Tony G because he's a prick. We all know that. I think Daniel Negreanu is a really good poker player, and I like him. However, I liked him better early on when he was kid poker, as opposed to now. He's like, not that there's anything wrong with it, but when he's doing these master classes and stuff like that, there's only so far he can take you with that kind of stuff. But he is a brilliant poker player. And how many times have you seen him call a hand? Man, you folded jacks, good for you, and because he had queens or whatever. But he's good at it. I like to watch Doyle play because he's like, you never know what's going on with him. You just never know. And you have time for a real quick story?
Sure.
I was in Chicago photographing Muhammad Ali, which is one of the favorite shoots that I ever did in my entire career. And in walks this guy in a pale blue cowboy kind of rigmarole, like the matching shirt and pants and the pointed boots and the whole thing. And no, I don't know how he got in there, but nobody knew who he was except for me. It was Amarillo Slim. And I talked to him for a minute, and he said, "I just wanted to come in here and meet Ali because I've never met him before." And I said, "Well, can I do a picture of you real quick?" He said, "Sure." And so I sat him down, and we had this little cove that we had built for a background. It was a curved cove, and I put a little stool there and sat him down. And for some reason, I didn't have a camera loaded, so I just grabbed a Polaroid. And I said, "Boy, it's really a shame we don't have a deck of cards." And he goes, both had a deck of cards. So like this guy.
Do you have the picture? Do you have the picture nearby? Could you grab it and show us?
So he pulls out a deck of cards, put the ace of hearts on top, and sat down on the stool and held the card in his hand. I did one picture, one Polaroid, and I said, "Thank you very much," and I will get it and show it to you.
Yeah, if you got the Ali one there too, that'd be cool as well. It's an interesting hearing the story and then being able to see the moment after the fact. That's really interesting. He just happened to walk up. I don't think I remember you ever telling me that story. And I think for anyone that doesn't know Amarillo Slim, he did pass away recently, but he was one of the original people who helped create the WSOP and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
He was this absolute, like, I read his book. He was this absolute like genius edge getter. I don't know how to say it properly, but he would fool you out of your money. I remember reading a story about him where he bet somebody a whole bunch of money that he could hit a golf ball a mile. They're like, there's no way you could do that.
Very big prop better. Very big.
Yeah, that's what it is. And he set himself up and he took a golf ball and a driver and he went over to a frozen lake and he hit it over a mile.
I heard that it was a long empty road, but same story basically.
Yeah, it was in the book. I think it was a lake or something like that. But yeah, what else did he do? I remember he bet somebody that his blind friend could bowl like a 90 or something like that. And this
what?
He like set somebody up. He had a blind guy somehow at a bowling alley, and
yeah. I heard that story too.
He bet somebody. He made like a ton of money off of this bet too. And it turned out that his no, it wasn't that. He bet that his friend could bowl a 90 with a blindfold on, and they didn't know that the gentleman was blind.
Blind, right?
Yeah, and so he did it no problem.
All right, so I found a couple of Ali. This is one of the Ali shots that we did.
That was that day, huh?
Yep. And
that's pretty cool.
There's another one, which I always like this one because it's just a tight shot of him. But how do you not like that face?
Yeah, it's true.
All right, and then when Amarillo walks in, this is, I scanned it and printed it out on my printer. But that's basically the shot. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah, and there's the deck in his left hand. Cool. Right.
And the ace of hearts. Yeah, it was so cool to meet him. I will say that my photographic career allowed me to meet so many people that I would have never, ever met before. I mean, I photographed Jack Nicklaus a half a dozen times, Ali, Michael Jordan I photographed. You know, and it goes on and on and on. I was very lucky, put it to you that way. I felt like I was very lucky to be in it at the time when photography was valuable.
Well, I feel like I was lucky that you stopped doing it and started doing True Poker Dealer. And I feel like everybody here is lucky about that too. And certainly appreciate you spending time on camera with me, which, you know, as a photographer behind the lens, you've always said you hate doing it, and I super appreciate you're willing to join for this.
I haven't minded this too much. You know, I don't love being in front of the camera, but, you know, with you, it makes it easier. I will say that.
Well, super appreciate it again. And I think now we've answered the questions that I've seen there, and I think we're good to jump off. So another thank you everybody for spending some time with us and watching.
It's coming in and it's getting all over my face, and I don't look so good anymore. So let's end this.
All right, let's end it. It's a photographer's way of saying goodbye. So until next week. I had actually teased this last time, and I was wrong about the weeks. Next week is going to be left-handed dealing with a left-handed dealer and what it's like to be lefty. Should be interesting. So I'll see you guys then.
By the way, left-handed dealers should not be allowed.
Well, maybe we'll have you come back on and say that.